Blog Talk Radio.
As the tears are falling from my face, with all my fears I long for your embrace. How am I gonna carry on and be the one you're leading on when I'm falling down? Now the tears are falling from your face. I never learned from all of my mistakes. How we gonna carry on? Can anybody be
right, and welcome to another episode of Continue Mission. And it is Veterans Day weekend 2023. I know that's hard to imagine, isn't it? 2023. It don't even feel right to say it, but we have to say it because it's true. It's 2023, and we are heading into Veterans Day. Actually, we will hit Veterans Day on this show on the East Coast, and you West Coasters, you got a few more hours behind us. So our friends that are out there, out west, hey, Greg Meakin and Val Olson, let me just give you a big hand salute for the wonderful job you did on Continue Mission. And Kim, you know we love you. Kim Justice, we've been doing this for a long time now. I think 7 years. Wow, that's a long time, right? Years just fly by. But last Friday, I had our good friends Greg and Val, Greg Meakin, Val Olson. Hey, look, Rich was busy. I was busy. Father Michael was busy. We were all busy. And it's like we had good, trusted friends, awesome friends who came on here and they knocked it out of the park, folks. Now, every Wednesday on X, on Val Olson's site, they do a show, and it is at noon, okay, East Coast time, 9 a.m. West Coast time, and it's Secrets from the Inside. So, folks, you got to listen to these shows. We have some pretty good, awesome dialogue on there, and a lot of secrets come out. Pretty cool stuff to hear. So you want to get in there. If you're not on Twitter, which is now X, get on Twitter/X and look up Miss Val. That's VAL Olson. Okay, and you will find her, and you just go on and hit like and subscribe and jump on there and check that out. Any chance that you get, you will be blessed. Also, you go to gregmeakin.com, where he has mastered the ability to cut out segments of these shows, both our shows and all of our shows. We're coming together, we're joining forces together, and it's just a wonderful thing to see that happen. So West Coasters are coming together with East Coasters, and look, these are my transplanted Canadian friends, okay, and they are living in Arizona, living in the home of the free and the brave. You know what I mean? The land of the free and the home of the brave. I always say it's the land of the free because of the brave, and that's why we're celebrating this weekend, is to thank those veterans for their service. Obviously, Memorial Day, we honor those who fell in battle, those that died as a result of their wounds and their service to this country. But Veterans Day weekend, we have the joyous celebration to remember and thank those people that served, went and did their part, no matter what it was. No job was unimportant, and no job was any more important than the other. Whether you were the infantryman fighting on the front line, the special forces guy or the gal, or the transportation worker or the cook or the clerk or more importantly, the family that supported you while you were back home. We were all part of one big warrior team, and it took everybody working together to make this thing happen. So remember, it's the veterans and it's also the families. You know, we should have a day dedicated to the families of veterans. Call it Families of Veterans Day, Veteran Family Day, okay? A day that would honor all of those that kept the home fires burning while we served. I would support that. I would support that. As a matter of fact, I would support that on the day following Veterans Day. I would. I think that would be a good time to do it. The day following Veterans Day, you would go and you would honor the family members of those that served in the armed forces and thank them, for what they've done. Look, I didn't realize how important that family network was. Obviously I appreciate it, and I did. But it wasn't until my sons went overseas, and my son is married to an airman, so I've got a daughter-in-law that's serving as well, and she's active duty. son is in the Air National Guard. He was active duty for a long time, and then he is now reverted to the Guard status. And the one son is out now. But there was a time there when we had three of them that were in, and when COVID kicked off, I got put back in uniform for about 58 days, and that was kind of a cool little experience for me. So we had a whole slew of McCormicks that were serving then. So there was actually, 4 of us at that time in different capacities. One son was overseas during Spartan Shield, and the other 2 were serving full-time active duty in the West Virginia Air National Guard. And, of course, they've deployed. They've been overseas as well. So here we are, folks. People say thank you for your service. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I know Father Michael and Rich has got some really good information that we're going to talk about related to transitioning back home. But I got a chance to speak to some kids today in New Philadelphia, Ohio. So for all you folks out there that are from Ohio or know where New Philadelphia, Ohio is at, salute to you. So Buckeye Career Center, salute to you and all your students that were there today. That was the most well-behaved, respectful class that school. It was the whole school, folks. It wasn't just a class. It was the whole school. No cutting up, no joking, no clowning, no making faces, none of that stuff. They really were respectful kids. And 11th and 12th graders, and they're not kids anymore, folks. Look, they are the next group of leaders. They're in the chute. The 11th graders, you're almost there. Seniors, you just got a few months. And you are out. So we talked a little bit about, what does leadership, the acronym leadership, loyalty, okay, duty, respect, right? Selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. So we talked a lot about that with these students. And before we started to talk, they took the hand raises of how many people are thinking of joining the military. And I'm going to tell you, maybe 3 or 4 kids raised their hand, that they were going to join. After the discussion, we asked that question again, and we picked up an extra 3 or 4 hands. They're like, you know what, I'm really thinking about it now. Because I explained to them about duty. What is your duty? Your duty is to your country, to yourself, to God, most importantly. But you have a duty, an obligation. And we, a lot of people don't see it the same way, but I do. I think that even though we don't have compulsory military service, I think it is implied, that you have an obligation to commit to something, some sort of service, to help your community, to help your country, to help your state. So, talk to your kids about the military. Talk to them about the military academy. Talk to them about, going to college and taking ROTC and stop scaring them. Telling people that we definitely, you don't want to join the military, because it should be the last option. No, it should be the first option. That should be the first option that every kid is thinking about is enlisting in the military or applying for an academy seat or going to college and taking ROTC. And I've told my kids that, when you go to school, you go to college, I encourage them, take an ROTC class, whether you want to serve or not, it would be good for you to get that experience. But, you just have to do it. And we have an obligation. It is a civic it is our civic duty to serve our country. It is. It's not a. To me, it's not. It's not an option. But other people think differently. And I think that when we talked about the leadership acronym, loyalty, duty, the selfless service part, that was a big one. Selfless service. What does that mean? So you have to explain that to people. Selfless service is doing something when you know you're not going to get a reward for it. It is doing something just because it's the right thing to do. Same thing with honor. Once you lose your honor, let me tell you something. That's the one thing that you may never get back if you lose it. And that's true. Integrity, what does integrity mean? Integrity means doing the right thing even when nobody's looking, okay? And personal courage is what it takes to do all those things, because nobody wants to be a stand-up guy or a stand-up girl anymore. They want to go along to get along, go along to get along. And if you want to know what's going on, while we're not getting people to enlist, it's not just about benefits. It's not just about, oh, well, it's hard, or, basic training sucks, or I'm just too weak and too soft. There are some people that are weak and soft, but the military would be good for them to get in there and to get themselves, reacclimated to work. So anyways, there we are. So we're going to bring Rich and we're going to bring Father Michael on here, and we're going to talk about Veterans Day. Hello, my fellow veterans. God bless you and happy Veterans Day, Rich and Father Michael. How's it going?
Same to you, James. Very good,
much.
Thank you.
Yeah. So fill us in, Father Michael. Tell us about your week.
Well, I got to go out to the field, and they had mentioned it to me. And, there's a good verse in Ezekiel that says, I sat where they sat. And, suffered through. It was really cold, but I got to spend a lot of time with the soldiers. And then when I got to share my briefing and homily, very good response. They, over 100 cadets and cadre, they applauded. And then I got to serve communion to several soldiers. Of course, I brought out candy and stuff, and I did a confession right out there. And so it's just an honor to be able to serve. I appreciate what you said. I volunteered at 17, and it's an honor to serve. As Jesus said, it's more blessed to give than to receive, and people don't know what they're missing. We had a lot of fun, even though we had a lot of hardship, all of us. And so I appreciate your words.
Yeah. Rich told me something one time, a long time ago, that you serve, then you owe nothing, to the country. Your debt is paid. We have paid our debt to become a citizen in this country. And people look at you like you're crazy when you say that. But, Rich, that's a very proper thing to say, because there is a debt that everyone needs to pay to be a citizen. And it falls around being a good citizen, following the laws, following the Constitution, trying to live, in an acceptable manner of civility and decency, and then committing yourself to some sort of civic service, public service, whether it be the military or whether it be volunteer firefighters, police officers, just volunteers in the community. So how's it going with you, Rich?
It's going good. I was out in Texas throwing people around last weekend. Had a good time with that. Yep.
Yeah. Eventually, I'm wondering when you get to the point to where you say, you know what, I'm just, it takes a little longer for you to recover, doesn't it?
Well, see, the thing about Aikido is you get out of it what you put into it. And it can be very low impact. Like, for example, an elderly gentleman came in to watch our class. He's got injuries. And I said, look, basically I can turn these exercises into physical therapy if we do them right. And, if you want an effective martial arts that you can learn quick, get into boxing, BJJ, something like that, but expect to get hurt. if you want to take your time and grow old with the martial arts, get into Aikido, right? And now, in my case, I'm 68, and the founder of my dojo came. We had a seminar a while back, and he came down here, and he had a bad attitude about because they shamed him into come down here. But it was like it's punish Killblane, and so he just started throwing me around, and I was getting airtime, and I joked with my students afterwards about it, and when I tell the story, I said none of my students. And I told that story at Texas too, and I said none of my students felt sorry for me because I was taking really good roles, and Reed Fowler, who's the head of the Lubbock Aikido, and he's a 5th degree black belt. He made a comment, and he said, sometimes your students need to see you get thrown around, and so anyway, but for me, I expect to be doing this in my 80s. They're over in Japan, you've got 80 and maybe even 90-year-old Aikidoists. So my health is holding up. So, and the thing is, when we do it right, no one gets hurt. No one gets hurt, so we don't have to worry about injuries. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. And the family, everybody doing all right in your family, Rich?
Yeah.
Good.
Monica's her business is taking. She's running her own business and getting some really good clients. So,
right.
Went over $100,000 in income last year, and so she's really happy about that.
Good. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Good. Well, and it took a while, when she kind of took that leap of faith, and now it's starting to pay off. So there you go. Good job, Monica. You love to see your kids be successful, and I want to see my kids be more successful than me. I want them to have a better life and a better, standard of living. But
my daughter had a interview for medical school. She had got accepted last year, but she didn't want to go because that's where she got her master's. And so I'm really proud of her pursuit. I think she's really gifted, and it's a hard road, but we need people who want to serve other people.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we definitely have to pray for that success.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important. So, Veterans Day. Rich, would you like to give us the history of Veterans Day? And then we're going to jump right into the topics that you guys wanted to hit related to post-traumatic and some other things that we're dealing with here. So, if you could give us
to give you a short version, the Reader Digest version. It originally was called Armistice Day. It's a celebration of the armistice that was signed that ended World War I on the 11th hour, the 11th day of the 11th month. Okay, all the shelling was to stop, and so so this was, first of all, for Americans, it was our first foreign war, our first war in Europe. And we came in at the tail end of it, and helped France and England win. And so, the Congress made it an official holiday, and so the 11th of November. Now, I say that. Now, up into World War II, now we had another World War, and so they changed it from Armistice Day to Veterans Day. So it now is to honor all veterans, Now, I will point out that the Marines have a little different take on. Oh, by the way, to all you devil dogs out there, happy birthday. Okay.
Happy birthday.
Yeah,
I
that's
served with
right.
some of them. Yep.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so November the 10th is the Marine Corps birthday. And if you've ever been invited or you ever get invited to a Marine Corps birthday, don't turn it down unless you don't like getting drunk, okay? It is a bash. And in fact, the reason they consume lots of alcohol is because the tradition is that the Marine Corps was formed in a drinking establishment, Tongue's Tavern. All right. And so the joke is that, for everybody else, the 11th of November is Veterans Day. For Marines, it's Marine Corps Hangover Birthday. Okay? So, Hangover Day.
Okay. So now that actually changed, right, from Armistice Day to Veterans Day in 1954, I believe, correct?
It was. I don't remember the year, but it was after World War II. Yes.
That's a great year if it was.
Yeah, 1954. It was, and it was President Eisenhower.
Yep.
That made that change. So awesome. Thank you for the roll up. Now, so if we could, let's just go ahead and Father Michael, tell us a little bit about your, tell everybody about your service and why you enjoyed serving your country and what Veterans Day means to you, and then we'll go on and Rich will do it, I'll do it, and then we'll jump right into this conversation.
Well, thank you. I grew up patriotic. I grew up believing that patriotism was a virtue. However, I was a bad boy, and I had one of those options. You're not succeeding too well here. You need to go into the military. And I made the decision, but with my parents' encouragement, my father signed. It was a great experience. I saw some things that could have traumatized me, and yet the direction of my life was changed because of the Christian men that I met. My father, who was a 100% disabled vet, was dying. So after Vietnam and the Westpac tour and all that, because I was sole surviving son, I got out. I always had a desire to go back. I used to have dreams. And, because the way the country took care of us, I also felt an obligation, because I believe with you, James, that everyone should serve, even if it's Peace Corps or whatever. So, that's where I really encountered the Lord and had a call to the ministry. And as I was going to school and things of that nature, I came out of the military, went back in on active duty 23 years later as an officer, as a chaplain. The Lord laid it on my heart, and I was able to pass all the tests and do everything for that. And I have a combination of 10 years. And be honest, my bishop had asked me to get out. And to be honest with you, I loved it so much, but I obeyed. I had some injury. But I've been working with the ROTC for now almost 20 years. And to go out to the field, I'd go out and visit them. But to go out and stay over and to minister to them, to be in some kind of clothing, it's a great privilege to serve. So a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues, they think, being patriotic is not a good thing. For me, it's a virtue. I'm proud of my son who served. And I'm just grateful to be able to minister with you two gentlemen, with your experiences, and with all the people in our audience.
I guess it's my turn. I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma where I think everybody was a veteran, and I just assumed that you grew up, graduated high school, went off to fight a war, then you came back and started your life over. I just thought that was just normal. Okay. And now what I originally wanted to do was geologist, because I'd watched all those black and white movies about archaeology, and that's when they were, finding these lost cities in the jungles. And my idea of archaeology was kind of the inspiration for the Indiana Jones series. And then when I was 12 years old, they rolled in this rack of files of all these different careers, and they would pull it out and tell you what you'd have to do to prepare for it. And so I remember walking up there, and the teacher just grabbed the art folder, and I said, nah, I'm not going to be an artist. He said, but you got the right letter, archaeologist. So I pulled it out, went over there and read, and it goes, okay, so you need to have your bachelor's degree, 4 years for that, then your master's degree, another 2 years, and another 2 or 3 years for your PhD. And I'm like, I don't even like to have to finish 12 years of school now, let alone all this other stuff. And the reason, we look at, why is it I wanted to be an archaeologist? Because I wanted to travel the world and have an adventure. And I'm like, well, screw archaeology. I'm just going to be a professional soldier. And so in my case, the Army, and then I saw that, I think it's a 1960 or 61 movie, black and white movie, titled Airborne. When I saw that, I'm like, that's what I want to do. Now, so I did not join the Army out of any sense of patriotism. I enlisted for the most selfish reason, and that was just to travel and have an adventure. And the Vietnam War was in its last year when I was a senior in high school, and they ended it. They ended it right before I enlisted. And then, but I was missing my trigger finger, and so, I was unqualified for military service. So I had to actually write my congressman to have him even consider me for a waiver. And now the funny part about it was, so if I was qualified for military service, I wasn't qualified for any of the schools. So I came in and asked for airborne infantry, and fortunately I had high test scores, and they put me in military intelligence. But fortunately, Special Forces on Okinawa was short my MOS and said, send us anybody who wants to go to jump school. So that's how I got that assignment. And it was while I was there that I got inspired to put in for the academy. And I had a great time. I got to participate in 2 wars in uniform, the El Salvador Civil War and then Panama Cause. And it also inspired me to become a historian and come back and work for the Army. And I got to participate in 2 wars there, Iraq and Afghanistan. And for my sins, they sent me to Haiti. All right. So, that's kind of like my military service in a nutshell.
Oh, all right. That sounds great. Thanks for those updates. I served in the Army and the Army National Guard a total of 22 years. It was a great time. Not everything was super nice. There were some times, when you suffered hardships, but all in all, there were more good times than there were bad times. So I am thankful for the opportunity to serve this great nation. So, and thank everybody that's listening, that's taken a moment out of their life to just say a simple thank you, or send a card, or send a message. Thank you. So let's get into the meat of the topic. I'd like to hear what you had written some things down, Father Michael, and instead of me rereading what you have sent me, I thought we would just go ahead and start with you on the information that you wanted to share tonight. So I yield to your command, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you, James. I really miss being with you, gentlemen, but I had other responsibilities, but I feel real at home. I think, we're so used to acronyms that we need to kind of look at the acronym and kind of talk a little bit about PTSD. PT was a big word for us, physical training, but this is post-traumatic, okay? And we all have encountered traumatic situations, emotionally, spiritually, physically. All of us are at different levels. All of us were affected differently. And so when people, have flashbacks and things of that nature, a lot of it's triggered depending upon what you saw, what you smelled, what you heard. The stress thing is the third, and I remember being with a medical doctor. He came from another country, and we were at a picnic, and he was eating all this, chicken, fried chicken, all this stuff. And I'm kind of looking at him because, he's a medical doctor. And he looked at me and he said, "It's stress that will kill you." And so when we talk about post, we think we're not affected. Sometimes you fall and I'm all right. And then you realize later on you're not all right. And you don't always realize what depth you've been traumatized until it keeps coming back to you. It had such an impact on your life. I remember seeing a plane go into the water and not ejecting, seeing dead bodies being preserved so that they could be sent home, in bags, so on and so forth. And smells are also something, and I'm sure James could tell us better, that triggers things, but it's stress. And you can only take so much stress before you break. So again, it's post. You felt like, I got out of there, okay. I didn't get blown up. But emotionally, you have injuries that cannot be seen. I talked to a veteran recently and said I would have much rather have had some physical things than some of the emotional things that I'm carrying. And of course, it's a disorder. You're not the same person. I've worked with a number of people. You're altered. People try to, when you come home, you're the same. You're not the same person. You've been educated in a different way. And so I just wanted to start, before we talk about antidotes, talk about treatment, talk about specifics so people can identify it, is to realize that it happens after, okay? And now some people anesthetize themselves with alcohol or drugs or, try to deal with the deep, traumatic pain, the flashbacks, the nightmares, things of that nature. But it's a stress that you can't take and carry yourself. When you put something on something and it can only bear so much, this is a stress. And the aspect of disorder is that you're just not the same. In my neighborhood in Newark, New Jersey, when someone was kind of emotionally or psychologically a little bit off, people used to say, he ain't right. Well, you kind of know, everybody around you knows that you're not right. And but you don't always want to admit it yourself, okay, because you want to be normal again. But after you've experienced certain things, I remember talking to one of my soldiers who had just seen a really bad car accident. And, there are things, people are traumatized if they're raped or whatever it might be, molested. We have different things that we've encountered in our lives that have left scars. And so it's not a matter of, just get out of the situation. I remember talking to a friend of mine. We used to teach laws of war and things like that together. And he was a gunner. He was a Marine. And he came into the Army later. And he said, when he left Vietnam, next night he's home. And, you're just not aware of what's going on, because now you're relocated into a situation, but every instinct in you, every reaction in you is still in that mode. And so the stress heightens, and there's a lot of avoidance. There's a lot of, coping skills, legitimate or illegitimate, that people use. But people have to give people time. I remember when my son came back from Afghanistan, I wanted to have a few people over, and Rich, you were one of them. And at first, he really didn't want to be around crowds or a number of people for a number of reasons. And sometimes you need that space to process what you've been through. Now, a lot of people are afraid to get help, and so they won't talk to anyone. And I agree with combat veterans that if a person hasn't experienced it, I just did a funeral. I really spoke at a wake for someone who lost a child, and they were asking me, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? Well, 7 years ago I lost a child about the same age as their child, and so there has to be that credibility. And, we know that some of the symptoms are people lose all kinds of interest in activities. It could even be sexual activities and, within their marriage, or their hobbies, their fishing, their hunting, because they've been marked for life. Now being restored and realizing that scar will always be there, but it can be healed to a certain extent so that you can begin to live again. Because really, you're dead inside. You might look like you're alive, but something died within. And so I just want us to be cognizant of it. I don't think that, this is a mark that you'll never be the same, in the sense that you can never live a full life, because many people, one of my wife's uncles was in the Second World War, kind of the second wave into Normandy. And, of course, there are peculiarities. You can tell, irritableness or a certain sharpness or whatever. Everybody's different. Everybody responds different. Guilt, I've talked to people, and things of that nature. But we have to acknowledge that they are our heroes, and you can say thank you for your service, but we have to give them service for the rest of their lives to help put them back together, because it's almost like Humpty Dumpty, and it's a major, major thing. Now, of course, God and Christ and the Holy Spirit can be a big factor in that, but there's just a lot of psychological things, and especially if people don't understand and they just want to drown it, with alcohol, or talk to people who have had similar experiences. You have heard, where people have maybe been in a DFW or something and drinking, and they start talking about defecating or peeing themselves, and, oh, you too, And so there has to be that camaraderie and that community. You can't be alone and isolated and detached, because it's just going to exacerbate the problem. And so I just wanted to highlight that acronym, just to say it's post. It may not happen until 3 months, 3 years, okay? Because something's been altered in your brain, and it's through trauma. You were traumatized. And, we try to suck it up and, I'm okay, but you're not. It's left its mark. And it's a stress that will kill you if you don't know how to process it. And lastly, it is a disorder, but it doesn't mean you're disordered. It's not normal. And with the community and the community of veterans and doctors and priests and chaplains and ministers and family that love one another, having a strong family unit, hopefully we can bring healing to our heroes.
Could you go down that list you shared with us on what the symptoms are for PTSD?
Absolutely, Rich. I certainly will. What I did is I have a few of them listed, but I'll start here. Flashbacks are feeling like the event is happening again. Trouble sleeping or nightmares. Feeling alone or detached from others. Losing interest in activities. Having angry outbursts or other extreme reactions. Feeling worried, guilty, that's a big one, or sad. Frightening thoughts. Having trouble concentrating. Having physical pain like headaches or stomach aches. Avoidance of memories, thoughts, or feelings about what closely associated with traumatic events. So let's say you were robbed in the sunlight, and so maybe on a sunny day you get jittery. So avoidance of memories, thoughts, or feelings about what closely associated with traumatic events. Problems remembering, right? You're so distracted. Negative beliefs about themselves or others, okay? And whether that was some of our ancestors who thought certain ways about Germans or Japanese or whatever. Irritability is a big one, okay? And there's a root reason for that. Feeling very vigilant. In other words, you can never unstring your bow, never relax. You know, you have to sit against the wall where you can see everything. You're always on duty. And lastly, startling easily. So I remember hitting a table one time. I had a Vietnam vet that I worked with, and he totally freaked out. And I've had, friends also. One of my friends was listening to a fan and then forgot it was July 4th and had a real flashback, just brought them back. So there are some of the things. Yeah, the self-medicating, I have that down. I have it as alcohol to counteract, and then, unfortunately, suicides, okay, because if they haven't dealt with the problem, it's just like having a bad infection that you never give attention to. Eventually, it's going to kill you. Yeah, avoiding crowds. Rich has said that to us earlier, and that's a real thing. And so just like when someone is depressed or suicidal, the worst thing to do is to say, hey, come on, let's go to a party, this and that. No, that's the worst thing. Just, maybe a little gathering for the family, but they're jittery, they're nervous, they need to process it. Was that adequate, Rich, as far as the list? I think that when a psychologist or whoever therapist person goes to, different people have different expertises, in a given situation. But the biggest thing is people sometimes are too proud or macho, and they don't want to admit that they've been broken and they need to be reset. And so if we could just encourage, has nothing to do with weakness. If anything, it has to do with strength. And we want to reach out. I know I do. I know Rich does. I know James does. And just embrace our heroes and help them to to be resilient. That's what I did my sermon on in the field on resilience, because they claim that this generation can't recover quickly. Now, in this process, if you try to recover too quickly, you're rushing the process and you're not going to be totally healed. But when you don't want to get up, I remember there was a guy from one of the military academies, I won't mention what it was, and he was a football player, athlete, went through a real traumatic time, and I tried to help him. I tried to help him up, and he was trying to pull me down. And he got suicidal and started to verbalize that to his family. We can't let it get too bad. We have to intervene, and that's why when Rich asked me to read those things, we need to just let people know, hey, you have a problem and there are people to help.
Well, some of the I guess symptoms that when I say I've encountered with other vets, like Jake McNeese, he he was leader of the Filthy 13, 4 combat jumps during World War II, and the I think it was one of the second ones, but having certain there's certain senses, your senses that will put you back there. Okay.
Yeah.
I was talking to one guy who's a Desert Storm vet, and he mentioned that when it turned hot, it would always put him back there. Another guy said when he would smell jet fuel, burning jet fuel. That would put him back.
Yeah.
Jake, it was when the weather turned cool in September, and that's when he'd get melancholy because he lost his favorite soldier, Joe Liskowicz, who was enlisted. There was like several 17-year-olds who enlisted into the airborne, and he was really fond of him. He got blown in two by German 88, and that bothered him. That really bothered him. So it was always that time of year when the weather changed, when it cools off, that he would get melancholy. And his wife would tell me, he said she would never, and I heard this with a lot of World War II vets, that the mother would always warn the kids not to go in and wake your father up. Because,
right.
They would always jump up like they're in combat and ready to kill you. Okay? I've heard that story from many. And Jake, it was the same thing. You got to let him wake up.
You know who shared a lot with me, Rich, a common friend of ours? Doc Washburn. Doc.
Oh, yeah.
He shared a lot.
He was a door gunner in the Battle of Yadrang Valley, but he did several tours over there too.
He certainly did, and we had a connection. He just shared, how much his wife had to put up with. With his nightmares and sweats and trauma, and he was a great guy, and I'm sure he used that experience, with a passionate teacher. I used to teach with him at times, and but it's good for us to learn from some of these people that have the courage to share, because that's the only way you can help other people.
Yeah. Well, I remember now. One of the things I noticed is POWs did, and there's a number of vets. Even Jack Agnew admitted, he came back from the war, and they want to forget it. They don't want to dwell in the past. But over time, once they start talking about it, there's a healing process to it. But I ran into a couple guys who were who'd been prisoners of war in World War II, and they were just talking about it just as easily as we're talking. And I'm like, I have never heard any prisoners talk about their experience as easily as you guys did. He said, that's the healing process, is to get them to talk. He said, we seek those guys out and begin to, get them into conversations like, what stall log were you in? One is something we understand. Okay, what stall log were you in? And then, ask them more questions. He said, for them, the therapy is once you can talk about it like it happened to somebody else, you're over it, okay?
Have you ever read any of Admiral Stockdale or John McCain's
no
journals from? Yeah, real good stuff, Rich. Yeah, I know you don't like them because they're Navy guys, but just the same. I guess it is therapeutic, like you're saying.
Yeah, and see, that's why after every war, these veteran organizations pop up. The Grand Army, the Republic and stuff. And it's more because you come back, you really don't relate to anyone else except others who have served. And I noticed when I was living in Oklahoma that all my friends were veterans. I don't think I had any friends that were not veterans or close friends. And now, we didn't talk about the war, but it was just we all shared the same values and similar experiences. And now here's one. Now, there's a Vietnam vet. He was a company commander, truck company. And when I went to interviewing, he led this convoy up from Cameron Bay to Bami Tui. And on the return trip, they got ambushed, and he lost a soldier, and that was the first big ambush for Southern Two Corps. Okay, and I was surprised at how easily he could talk about it and honest about the mistake he made. Because there was a policy that because I'd interviewed the battalion commander. He said, I had a policy that you don't roll without air cover. If you got air cover, you won't get hit. And he said, yes, we've never had an ambush like this before, just small, they just shoot at you with small arms or maybe an RPG, but not a complex ambush, a large-scale ambush. And he said we'd made it up to Bami Tui without any problems. He said we should have no problems going back because something happened with the helicopters that they couldn't fly support. So he made the call and he lost one of his soldiers. And every time I'd go to the reunion,
I want to know who was the truck driver.
Reunion, every time we'd go to a reunion, we'd always talk. We'd talk. Finally, the last, we'd just check in, see how he's doing. But it was finally the last reunion that I met him, and he told me, he said, it finally hit me. It finally hit me. He said, and his wife was there and said, you need to interview me on because the wives have to put up with this. And evidently his symptom was he just had total emotional breakdowns. It finally caught up with him. And I was really shocked after, the years of knowing him, how easily he was able to talk about it. But then it just hit him all of a sudden. And complete change in
Who was the truck driver at the transportation school that was also a Vietnam vet? He was on my floor when we were there. Do you remember?
I know who he is. He was actually a lieutenant,
was he?
commander.
Okay.
Okay. It was him and Doc Washburn were the two Vietnam vets. I actually interviewed him. I've got his interview online, and he had some interesting experiences. And I'm trying to think of what else. But those are most of the symptoms that I've found with veterans.
Right.
Yeah. Now my brother, he had, for him, his trauma was they were rolling back. I mean, he was with the Task Force Papa Bear. First, he was in 1st Battalion, 1st Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division. That went through the wall and drove into Kuwait. And it was interesting because when he first came back, he didn't want to talk about it. Want to talk about the war, but he would talk with me, and he would tell me about what happened. But he didn't want to, part of it, it's kind of the same thing with me with Panama. I'm like, look, I had enough of that. It's not that I can't talk about it. It's just I really want to, change the subject and just deal with something else, okay? After I've, processed it, then I can go. I mean, there was nothing traumatic about Panama. It's just, when you go into a big military operation, it can be very intense. I mean, it's just it's just everything is you're on edge, okay?
Well, you were the war planner, right, for that?
Yeah, I was a planner.
Right?
So we're it wasn't until late. I mean, we're constantly planning what we're going to do tomorrow, and finally, when we got the retrograde planned, that we could relax. Okay. In fact, the planner, he just took off and left me there in case they had any questions. But up until that point, it's just you're wired. Well, so Doug, he came back and he didn't want to talk with anybody about it. He just wanted to unwind. I think that's what it is. You just want to unwind. But then after, a couple months or whatever, well, then the story started coming out, and it was back to the old, Doug, and it was like how I defeated the Iraqi army all by myself. And we're friends with his driver in RTO. And James was his name. And I looked over at him and I said, "Hey, James, is that actually how it was?" And he goes, "No." Doug, was that brave? He goes, No, because they were when they went up, I think it was they built a bunker, okay, before they were in the camps. But then when they went to their staging areas, they're living in bunkers. And he said every time it didn't matter what time of night he woke up, he looked over there and he'd see that little red glow of Doug sitting there sucking in a cigarette. Well, he didn't normally smoke, but he started chain smoking when he was over there. And I looked at it, we all started laughing, and Doug goes, "Well, I was worried about my men. And I'm like, "Doug, you probably were, you'd always wanted to go to war, but now you're married with kids. Now you've got something to lose." And but he knew, going through the breach in the trenches and all that was going. They expected high casualties with that. They were surprised at how little resistance they had. But as they were continuing down the road, what bothered him the most was a Toyota pickup pulled up with 5 Iraqis. They got out to surrender. So the column stopped, and he was in a Humvee, so he got out and went over to basically accept their surrender when they pulled on him. And, he shot 2, his driver shot 1, and the rest of them were caught. Yeah, he got caught. I mean, everybody just opened up, and he's caught in the middle of this firefight. But the problem, this is what was interesting, is what haunted him was these guys were in civilian clothes. Because he went to search them. They were in civilian clothes, and that really bothered him, that he killed civilians. And he told me that battalion called him in later and said, those were not civilians. Those were Iraqi assassins. These are the guys that were going around behind all the Iraqi positions and threatening to kill anybody that deserted or defected or something like that. He said, you killed assassins, and but he still struggled with that. And then it was later one time he told me that this is something he had left out. You know, we every now and then we'd talk, but I was the only one, me and my mother. But when he was talking to my mother, he was usually drunk, okay, crying about it because it bothered him for a long time. But he told me one time that this is how much it bothered him during the event. Is as they're going down the road, they left the bodies there. His driver goes, I think one of them was a female. They pulled out of the column the middle of the night in the desert, drove back there to double check the bodies to make sure they hadn't killed a woman. And but anyway, yeah, he became an alcoholic. But part of his PTSD was also fact he had two sons commit suicide. One of them was an Iraq War vet. He was a CV over there and never went outside the wire, but got mortared. I mean, what bothered him was the mortar attacks. And even though the thing is, you know, when I was dealing with the VA, trying to get, you know, in the beginning, when I first got involved in supporting or validating PTSD claims, a truck driver had to prove he was, or a veteran had to prove he was in enemy contact.
Right.
And I remember telling this one VA rep, I said, you know, you don't have to be in contact, being in a firefight to suffer PTSD. I said, those guys are rolling out, you know, every day. They got 365 days in country, and any one of them could be their last day on Earth. And that's stress in its own right. And he still didn't get it. And I asked him, I said, well, how'd you like to be driving a truck in Iraq right now? And he goes, no, I wouldn't. I said, why not? Because it could get killed. I said, right. And that's when it hit him. That just the stress, just knowing, you know, that death is waiting for you out there. So after that, they changed the policy that all you had to prove was you're a truck driver in Vietnam, and you got your PTSD claim. Okay.
You know what exacerbated
those are some of the
healing. Yep.
Yeah, those are some of the
helpful.
examples I've dealt with.
That's good. You know what exacerbated and delayed the healing process for Vietnam vets, and it's very interesting. It was very hostile on the college campus.
Right.
And, of course, you know, abortion is a big thing, but they were very, very easily provoked to call you a baby killer, this kind of thing, everything. And so you almost had to conceal the fact that you were a veteran, no parades. And so, again, the healing, because I want to talk a little bit about antidotes, hope, treatment, therapy, but the healing was delayed.
Right.
Because you didn't want, you know, we grew our hair long. You don't want anyone to know because how they reacted and the suicide rates of Vietnam vets as well as other vets. But we can't delay this healing process by exacerbating it. You know, we've got to share hope and antidotes and others who have been successful. But I know that it was a very, very bad time where even if you came home to a parade and rah-rah, you still got to deal with your demons, just like you said. Where you still, and a lot of people, I just listened to a teaching, and they were talking about no culpability. I think I sent it to you. I know people, even though they understand they're an agent of the state, they still have to deal. I think David Grossman in his book on killing said there's only about 3% people that are really killers. And we've talked about this before, the misfiring in the Civil War, in the First, Second World War, and how they did the conditioning during Vietnam. But I think that if you delay your healing and the society and the culture, you know, exacerbates and makes it worse, then you wonder, is this the same place I left? And so I think that's a real issue as well. Because, I think you've said this. I remember volunteering for a mission, and it didn't happen because the weather really got bad. But I think we all have a desire to experience, not to destroy our lives, but to have a sense of justice, to experience the thing that we were trained for, or whatever it might be. But we all have to be a part of this process of healing, and people have to be able to trust you. And I've talked to, like you have, some really, hardcore people, okay? And, of course, James is in that category. But to be able to have a level of trust where they can at least feel that it's a safe space, that they're free. Of course, that's the whole thing, with confession, too. It's a safe space. But we've got to encourage the healing process. And we can identify it and say, okay, these are all the symptoms, but what do we do next?
So,
all right,
so that would be a good segue to talk about what is the healing process.
Yes, definitely. The first thing I think is to offer hope, okay? So you can be helpless but not hopeless. If you don't think that the situation could ever improve, you don't think your marriage could be the same, you don't think the relationship with your children could be the same, you don't think your relationship to your body could be the same. And I'm not talking about false hope, but there have been people who have made it. But then we've got to talk concretely about treatments and antidotes. For instance, this detachment, feeling alone. Well, you have to have community, but it's not going to the mall and saying I belong to the community. You've got to learn to reconnect with people you trust, like you did in the military. So it's a very long process. Like you and I were talking today, you were saying, don't come into Aikido if you just want to learn something real fast, because it's a long process. Well, so too, you were damaged greatly, just like some of these soldiers go through, 90, maybe 100 surgeries, for different things. And that's traumatic as well. And so I just think that the right kind of treatment, the right kind of therapy, and I'm appalled on what they're doing in Canada. I heard a combat wounded veteran confronting the president up there because, they have this number, well, if you want to kill yourself, we'll help you and show you how, and this kind of thing. And I just feel like, it's just like when you buy a car. The salesman, oh, yeah, we got you here, we got you here, we got you here, we got you here. We bought a used car one time, and then we went, and they said, oh, no, we're not taking care of this. My wife called the owner. Like, wait a minute, there's always a hard sell, whether it's recruited. But then when you come back, and I know James has had a different experience, but my experience with the VA has not been good. They've dropped, and maybe it's because our area, Rich, we have a lot of veterans and whatever. But I just think that, we have to stay with them. And I know my son just went to the VA hospital after 10 years of being out. And I've been encouraging him all the time. And it's got to be other veterans that do that. And we've got to stick together and have that camaraderie. So, I believe there can be healing. But I believe that, for them to even want to face what they went through. If you've ever talked to someone who's been raped or gone through something, they're afraid to face it again or to talk about it again because they relive it. And so how do you help them anesthetize themselves, so not with medication or alcohol or drugs, but so that it doesn't hurt as much? But like you were saying earlier, those people said, this is our therapy. This is our, I know, we were traumatized in some things growing up, and every time we're together, my wife and my brother-in-law, they laugh because they see how therapeutic it is to relive it and to have the support of those who shared the same trauma with you.
Well, something I had read, I think it was an article or book, but there are some very positive things that come out of the experience of combat, and you touched on it a little bit when you talked about the camaraderie, and people will tell you that you know what we call our battle buddies. Is this person is my brother, or this is my sister. He is, I'd go to the reunion, and they'd wrap their arm around that person and said, this person is closer to me than my own blood kin, okay? And, see, there's this support apparatus that is built into a unit. You live with each other, 24 hours a day. You know you can depend upon this person. If you get shot, someone's going to come and get you. And what they said is, when these people return to civilian life, there is not that support apparatus. You get a job, and when you go home, you're no longer connected to the people you work with. Whereas in the Army, in combat, you were with them all day, every day. So, and like I said, that's probably why we find veterans as friends. But that's part of the therapy is to find that support group. Okay. Now I throw this out because the martial arts is a family. Okay. And in fact, we it's like every time we have a seminar, we always conclude it with a party. And I posted pictures of our, the group photo in Texas, and then I had a picture of the pizza party afterwards, and we have when we do the summer camp, we have this big ice cream social. But yes, you're joining a family, and that's part of the healing process. Okay?
Yeah, I think any kind of community.
Go ahead.
No, any kind of community like church and things of that where there's an intimacy.
Right.
I thought First Blood, he kind of verbalized how some veterans feel, and the isolation part. But you were going to say something else.
Well, this is an observation I made. Except for the change in the weather and don't wake him up. Jake was the most well-adjusted, and I met a lot of others, but I knew Jake's combat experience, and I was surprised how well-adjusted he was for what he went through.
Didn't his faith play a part in that?
No.
You don't think that is...
No. He was well-adjusted before that. I would say his faith is what kept him out of trouble. Okay. No, it was his sense of humor.
Good.
What I found was
coping skill.
Yeah, laughing at I think one of the best things to do is if you're struggling with PTSD and hey, go turn on the TV or go to the internet, get on YouTube, and just start looking up comedy. Yeah. Laughter is the elixir of life. And I found people who could, talk about experience, but laugh about it. Jake can tell, in my book, that's what it is. It's like every combat experience he had was, well, not all of them. There's a couple that weren't funny. But, he could make a joke out of just about anything. All right. And that was, so I think laughter is good therapy.
Medicine. The Bible says medicine. Amen.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I know for myself, I need a belly laugh because I hear a lot of problems from people, and it doesn't be good, and I could have heard it before, it's wholesome. The guy's really skilled. He's funny. He's animated. No, I think that's really good. And if you don't, because especially with the amputees and people that are blind or lost their hearing, this and that, I mean, again, and I don't mean to say that in a flippant way, but it's almost like Humpty Dumpty. It's like this is a major, major thing, and I think we need God's help, but we need to get our hands dirty and say, you've been through hell and back, and now to have some normalcy and have some equilibrium, you just need to know your worth. You need to, because one of the things it was saying, feeling badly about yourself, not only the guilt from what you did, but it's almost like you lose your confidence and your self-worth, and you begin to self-loathe. And, I work with a lot of people for various reasons that do that. And we have to be able to counter it without being superficial, because I think in a lot of ways they've died in so many areas inside. And, how to resurrect that and bring that back to life again is a major thing. And I think it takes a community. Because I know some of these weekends they have and some of these different support things, but I think, family or, people, their relationships have blown up. But there's got to be patience. One of the things I listened to as I was preparing, one of the therapists kept saying how important it is for the person to have patience, but certainly also the others who now realize they're very different.
Mm-hmm. Well, here is an example where the scriptures has helped heal, like Doug. And I think when he finally came to grips, there's guilt survival or survival guilt, especially when you've lost someone close to you in combat, or you're walking down a trail and someone else gets killed instead of you. Like that should have been me, and they struggle with that. But with Doug, it was that one incident. But he pulled me, and he got back into the church, and he quoted that scripture, and I'll let you tell what it is. But it's about when Jesus said, "Look at the lilies in the field, look at the butterflies," and he said that God takes care of them. But the most important part of that scripture was that worrying will not add one day to your life.
Right.
And he finally came to grips. He says, he just had to accept it for what happened, for what had happened, and just and let it go, So what was the scripture? I forgot.
Yeah, because Jesus puts the emphasis on how much more we are worth as those made in God's image. And then he gives us this prescription. Each day has enough evil of its own. And I think some people are trying to live in next year when they only have the grace to live for today. A lot of the people I've worked with in AA and NA, just for today, I'm able to, be victorious. But Padre Pio's real big about not worrying. That doesn't accomplish anything. As a matter of fact, it's just anxiety. It makes things worse. And certainly we want to make our peace with God. We've all had improper judgment. We've all made mistakes. But God is a merciful and a kind God. And I think we need to know that. And I've said this many times because I'll do it in confession. Once a person has really repented, they're really sorry for their sin. We call it contrition. They are absolved from their sin. And even if they are still processing it and saying, well, I can't forgive myself, you're not more righteous than God. And that's why you do penance, okay? It's not like you're paying for your sin, but you're repairing it. Okay, like when you break the window, you're sorry, but then you pay for the window. And so there are things that people do that bring healing to them. And there's some penance that I have given that is appropriate to what the person did, and the whole purpose of it is to repair that wound in them that caused them to do that thing. So it's not a penalty, it's a prescription, it's a salve, it's medicinal. And when you're dealing with people's souls, not just their minds, you got to be skillful as a soul doctor. And sometimes people won't let you, touch them or, touch a situation. But if they begin to expose the wound, I'm sure this has happened. I've got burned really bad. And you don't want no one touching it. But if they don't touch it and they don't medicate it and cut the dry skin, it's going to get infected, and it's going to be worse for you. And so what I have found with people is once they feel the level of trust, I'm working with someone right now that seems to be way out there or whatever like that, and it's been a while, and the person has gotten to the place where they trust me, where they look forward to getting together. And if you can't create that environment, no healing is going to take place. And it just takes a lot of effort to be patient, to do that. But I go back to that wound. My daughter was going to be a doctor, when she touched it and she'd put, peroxide on it and cut the dead skin, I didn't want no one to touch it. But it had to be taken care of. But I trusted her because I think she has the touch and the anointing, and she was gentle, and she seemed to know what she was doing. And I think we have to be around the people that are willing to trust us enough to share the ugliness, the smell of the wound, everything, and to know that God still accepts them. There's nothing that they have ever done that God will not forgive. And that's where God's mercy comes in, but they need to come to grips. But if you don't deal with it for 10 years, it's going to be harder. And that's why I said with that big burn that I got, it was like my wife took pictures. They showed it to a doctor. I should have gone to the emergency room. She got this salve from me, but then I had to let someone touch it or it was going to get worse. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage people, you can trust someone you can trust to help foster your healing.
Mm-hmm. Now, some of the other symptoms that you described is, lack of energy and just kind of being a recluse. Well,
right.
We had this one guy, Dave Willett, who came to the first Vietnam reunion of truck drivers that we hosted at our museum, and he brought this wonderful collection of 1/35th scale models of gun trucks he had built. And these are scratch kits. He would get a model of a 5-ton truck and then get all the plastic, and he built, the gun trucks. There was no model kits for it. He had to build them. And when we asked him, why he did this, and he said part of his, when he went to the VA and they were dealing with his PTSD, the therapist advised him that he needed to find a hobby, got to be busy. You got to have something that occupies your mind that you enjoy doing.
Right. And
so he picked up the hobby of scale modeling and was doing it. We still have him. He was so impressed with our Vietnam exhibit that he left all those models of the gun trucks, and he actually built one of James in the Zebra. James, you remember seeing that. Getting active, I remember watching a documentary on a platoon from the 101st that served in Afghanistan, and this one guy got the idea of taking these, I guess, head cams or whatever, and filming the whole deployment. And they turned it into a documentary, and then they followed these guys when they came home. And it was interesting because one guy, he was suffering PTSD, and his therapy was BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And what he described, I knew how that helped, because it's the same thing in Aikido, is that, man, once you get on that mat, it requires so much intense focus that whatever your problems were before you got onto the mat, they're gone. They're gone. Okay, it's like cleansing your mind for a couple hours or whatever. And so I'm a big proponent of the martial arts as a form of therapy.
Because one of the categories is frightening thoughts and having trouble concentrating.
Yeah.
But that's because you're so distracted with all these thoughts, and when you really have to concentrate. I know you said, running is a good thing for you, but the operative word there, I think what you said, is focus.
Right.
Because when you're scattered like that, you're all over the place, and you can't hone in because you have so many triggers that you're afraid are going to go off. And no, I think that's wonderful, because I'm surprised a lot of people don't have hobbies or are not really in touch with their purpose. We always say the two most important days are the day you're born, the day you find out why. And when I talk to these cancer patients, and I told them, even when I was diagnosed with cancer, I didn't have time for it. I have too much to do. So I did. I didn't put my head in the ground. I prayed, and I got counsel, and I did, the major surgery. But I was back at work for 3 weeks and doing what I had to do. And I think they have to realize there's a life after war. They have to be involved and use their gifts and endowments and talents that God has given them. And it doesn't mean you neglect those things, but it doesn't mean that they define you. I tried to teach these cadets, don't let hardship define you. You've got to learn how to get back up. And, that. I remember one time I was playing high school football. I was a middle guard, and we were playing the class above us. And the guard, offensive, guard pulled, and then they both double teamed me. I went back on my back, and you could see the dust coming up. And I didn't want to get up and dust and I've had things in life where I've had that happen. And I always remember that situation. You need to get up, get off the bike, because you fell, and get back on it. But I had to get back up and get back on the line. That type of thing happens. And so you only do it by doing it. You only overcome it by doing it. And that's where a lot of will, determination, tenacity, and things of that nature come in. But others can encourage you. But if you refuse to get up, then the next thing they're going to be doing is burying you, because you're basically put a death sentence on yourself, and you don't want to move forward. And you can't do that. You can't stand still. You have to keep going. And it doesn't feel good to be defined by that. Everybody has a different level, okay? But a lot of people have overcome phenomenal things. The human spirit is stronger than the body and the mind.
Well, here's another form of therapy I did not know about. And so I'd interviewed all these Vietnam vets, and they wanted to tell me their story because they knew what I did with it. They, whatever pain and suffering they had experienced, they wanted someone to learn from that experience. Okay, so they gave me their stories. And keep in mind, there were some of these guys had a hard time talking about it, but I had earned their trust. And
earn a hearing.
Yeah, and James knows one of them, Roger Champs. He earned the Silver Star in Vietnam for this one ambush, and he really had a hard time talking about it. And because he didn't like talking about the experience, but knowing what I was going to do with it, he consented to an interview, and we went to his room so no one else would hear it, and he gave me a story. When I finally got to writing the Convoy Ambush Case Studies Volume 1, which covered the Vietnam War, and I was writing that, and I had his interview, and I had interviews of other people. Well, I had questions. So I called him up, and I said, look, I got to apologize, but I want to get this story right. He said, so I have some questions of you. And I tell he was struggling with answering, because now I'm getting into some details. Sure. So I write the notes down, and then I hang up, and I work on this. And sure enough, I've still got more questions. So I called him back the next day, and I'm like, I'm really, really sorry to call you, but I want to get this right. He's going, I couldn't sleep last night. After talking to you, I could not sleep last night. I had to drink a 6-pack of beer. I could not sleep last night. I said, I know, but I got to get this right. So he answered my questions. The book came out. He asked for like a box of those things. He was taking them to get them, or he was dropping them off in the libraries and things like that. And in fact, so when I went to the next reunion after that book, oh man, the vets, I couldn't sit down. I'd be flooded by these guys. But it was the smile on Roger Champ's face that said it all. And here's a guy who does not like talking about the experience, but he doesn't have to anymore. It's in black and white, and it's like here. And I had the same thing. I had similar responses when Volume 2 came out about Iraq and Afghanistan, and the guys would tell me, said, I don't have to talk about it anymore. I don't have to answer anyone's questions. You want to know what I experienced? Here, read it. Okay. Because they tell me, you got it right. You didn't embellish it. That was the other thing. They all said, don't embellish it. We don't want it to be glorified. We just want the story told. And one guy, I really enjoyed his account. He goes, look, he said, because they asked for autograph copies, and I was mailing them out. And he said, could I have another copy? Because he was a recruiter. He's a E7, Sergeant First Class, head of a recruiting station. And he said, all these other guys in my office are wanting to read it, and I don't want them to ruin the autograph copy. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'm going to send it to you. No problem. And then I thought about it. I said, I would like to know, what's it feel like to have been in, it was a 9-hour ambush. It was a 9-hour. It's like the longest ambush of the war. And very few people have ever heard of it. And I said, how's it feel? And he goes, all right, so how do those people react when they read it? He says, first of all, because now it was a quartermaster quartermaster company that was, retrained to be convoy escort gun trucks. And I always forgot to ask, like, what kind of quartermaster company? It was a fuel handlers. They pump gas. Okay. So he would say, yeah. So when he's talking to these prospective recruits, he would say, doesn't matter what your MOS is. You're a soldier first. Well, all these other NCOs in the office were like tankers, infantry guys, and stuff like that. And they're going, yeah, sure, okay, you pump gas. He said then they would but he didn't talk about his experience. He let him read it. And what happened to him is his Humvee, or not Humvee, his MRAP, pulled up in an overwatch position, and it rolled over pressure mine and blew up his truck. And he was isolated his gun truck was isolated for 2 hours, and the enemy tried to overrun it a couple times, okay? And so he said when they read it, he said the first thing happens is a jaw opens. He said then the tears well up, and then they ask questions. What was like? What did it feel like to get blown up? What did it feel like to be isolated for 2 hours? You know, they were asking very pertinent questions. And you could tell they had this newfound respect for this guy. But he never talked about it. But it was, here it is. It's written. And that's something that, that's something we do. Now, there is something, like if you read Fledge's book, With the Old Breed, I think he wrote, there's sometimes veterans will write their experience down as part of therapy. And I was asking, my mentor, who was a Marine, and asked about that. Why, because he goes into really gory detail about what it was like fighting, on Okinawa and Peleliu, and mentor said it was therapy. He wrote, and I've heard of other people that saying the same thing. They have to write their story. You either got to talk about it or you got to write it. Okay?
Right.
So
it's like poison. If you don't get it out, Rich, it's like poison.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, that's right. If you don't get it out, and legit, but what you have done, especially because you didn't embellish it. I remember I was talking to an officer, and I was trying to explain to this officer at Fort Bragg that embellishing is akin to lying, exaggeration.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, and so I'm the biggest liar there is around.
No. But you did not see. They wanted
not the book. I'm talking about my war story. Yeah, I tell stories all the time.
We all. Yeah. But they wanted an accurate report, and that's what you gave them. That satisfied them, and evidently it was convincing to the others that read it because it was done well. Yeah. That's a great service, Rich.
Now I got a lot of feedback from both the Volume 1 and Volume 2 and for some people it's just knowing that what they did is remembered, their sacrifice is remembered and appreciated. Okay, they may not, and in fact they don't have to talk about it. But people. But
it's interesting when you're in an operation, okay, and you read about it. Sometimes you learn more about. You weren't as cognizant as everything that was going on, but that it's recorded accurately. And I don't know about you, but the little I did, I felt it was significant because this particular operation was very significant in the long run. But I'm saying when it's put in that framework, it's not like one person's trying to take credit. It's that I had the privilege of being a part of that.
Right.
And that's our unity. That's where our unity comes in.
Yeah.
Just like in our faith, we don't say my Father, we say our Father. We're together. We're together. And I commend you because I know that it's brought great healing. And I think that's the whole thing we're talking about on the show tonight. We want to see healing and therapy and treatment and hope and antidotes to some of these destructive behaviors because it's not normal what they had to confront. And so
we haven't heard from James, and I know he's been diagnosed with PTSD. James, what are your thoughts?
Well, we're down to about the last 12 minutes, and I've enjoyed listening, and I know that actually we had a couple of callers call in. One of them was asking questions about, what can a person do that is maybe a family member of someone, and they see some of these symptoms. And then, of course, we had another caller call in and, was, talking about Fauci and everything else. So we get a whole range of calls in. So let me just say that, as you go through any traumatic experience, your life is going to change. Things that you see, you witness, you do. Sometimes it's a case of people feeling guilty. Sometimes it's a case of people feeling angry. But as you know, we go through these myriad of emotions, and it just seems like, for me, I stay busy. That's how I deal with PTSD. I stay busy. So I work. I do the metal detecting. I've constantly have got to be on the go, because then the more I work, the less I have time to sit around and think about things and dwell about things, because you do get these intrusive thoughts sometimes. Where
Roger
you're
Champ
in an
said
area.
the same thing, James. Roger Champ said the same thing. He works like 3 jobs. He doesn't have time to stop to think. Yeah.
That's true, and I can attest to that, because I know Roger Champ and have seen him over the years doing that same thing. I think that staying busy, keeping your mind occupied. Number one, it's healthy. It's mentally, it's emotionally healthy, and number two, I think that is really what a lot of the World War II veterans did. They just went to work. They went to work. But I'm like all of you. I had World War II veterans and uncles and such that were in the wars and during World War II, and there were times when they were very much different, or when they was just waking up, and as they got older, I noticed some of that PTSD really manifested again. I don't know if anybody's ever dealt with that, but
some of them, Rich, James, just to say, my one uncle was in Europe for 4 years. So the intensity also, and I think we saw the need to, make it a shorter deployment, even though we know in the last few wars there have been several deployments, but that has to break you down when you're constantly in that environment for year upon year.
No doubt. So final thoughts are, I'd like to say happy Veterans Day to all of you veterans, and a big thank you to all of you families that support your veterans out there. I want to tell everybody thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the call-ins, even the ones that call in and ask crazy questions. We love you too, so keep calling in. And then, Rich, any final parting thoughts?
No, I think we covered the subject fairly well.
Father Mike, we got 8 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yeah, I'd like to pray for healing and for moral courage for those that are suffering alone, that they would reach out, and that others who are aware of their situation, like family members, would try to intervene and try to get them help. So if I could pray, I'd appreciate that.
Yes.
Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this opportunity. We celebrate our veterans, Lord. We thank you for the sacrifices that were made. Some gave all, Lord, but all gave some. And I just pray that you would heal minds tonight, heal hearts, bring about resilience, Lord God. Allow people to say in their hearts, I want to live again. Lord, I just pray, Lord, that our country would put its priorities correct its priorities as regards our veterans. I pray that there would be other organizations that would reach out to veterans, but I pray especially that the VA system would be able to meet their needs because they didn't ask any questions. And I just pray that everyone will be proud of their service, and we just thank you for them. We're proud of them, Lord, and proud of our country. And I thank you for Rich and for James and their sacrifices. And thank you for this opportunity to come to you. Heal us, oh God. Heal our land. Heal the veterans that are dealing with PTSD. I pray in Jesus' name, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Well, thank you very much for that wonderful prayer. And, give thanks to God, folks, in everything that you do. Praise him in the rain, praise him in the sunshine, and you will find that life does truly get better. And that's another wonderful thing to help you with PTSD, and that is your faith. And so I'm glad and happy for it. We've all experienced some tragedies, my friends. All three of us have. We've seen some bad things in our lives. We've experienced bad things. But mostly we've experienced and seen people suffer. Recently, we see the suffering that just occurred in Israel, the murder and the mayhem by the Hamas terrorists. And now you see, the anger towards Israel for, going in to prevent that from ever happening again, because they know they've had to deal with Hamas for many, many years. So it just seems like a violent cycle. And when you see things like that, especially over that time period, really, really keep an eye on your friends and do the buddy checks and make sure that that you all are looking out for each other. And because all it takes sometimes is just one little nudge, and you can either be pushed back on the ledge or you can be pushed over the ledge. And let's be the nudge to push them back. So every Friday on Continue Mission, we'll be here with Father Michael Pacella and Richard Killblane and myself, James McCormick. And every now and then we pull on our good friends, Greg and Val. And I want to send a big shout-out to them once again for taking our place and doing a really good job. Got a lot of compliments on last Friday's show. Very good show. And it's good to have friends like that you can trust, that step in, and they just do a phenomenal job, and they just carry it on for us. Guys, I don't have anything else to say other than to tell each of you personally, Rich and Father Mike, happy Veterans Day. God bless you. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being my friend.
Well, thank you.
Same to you.
So, and I have nothing else to say other than listeners, listen in every Friday night from 10 p.m. to midnight on Continue Mission on Blog Talk Radio, the Brain Injury Radio Network, where you can come in and you can actually even be part of this show. So call in, listen in, share the show. Let us know what you like. Also, let us know what you don't like. I think that's very important as well. And in the interim, I say to all of you, good night. God bless you. Happy Veterans Day, and have a great weekend. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Wake up at Holiday Inn Express to a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. Count on all the hot, fresh coffee you need and an incredible breakfast buffet that has something for everyone, like eggs, cinnamon rolls, and even hot fresh pancakes with all the toppings you crave. Next time, do yourself a favor and stay at a Holiday Inn Express with a can't-miss breakfast that's free with every stay. So, when you wake up at Holiday Inn Express, you'll wake up happy. A part of IHG Hotels and Resorts.
You know when you're really stressed or not feeling so great about your life or about yourself? Talking to someone who understands can really help. But who is that person? How do you find them? Where do you even start? Talkspace. Talkspace makes it easy to get the support you need. With Talkspace, you can go online, answer a few questions about your preferences, and be matched with a therapist. And because you'll meet your therapist online, you don't have to take time off work or arrange childcare. You'll meet on your schedule, whenever you feel most at ease. If you're depressed, stressed, struggling with a relationship, or if you want some counseling for you and your partner, or just need a little extra one-on-one support, Talkspace is here for you. Plus, Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members only pay a $25 copay or less. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off of your first month when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Talkspace.com.